Hello, welcome back to History of Wine and the Vine. I'm Emily Kate. So this week we're going to be continuing again with our mega series on drinking and drunkenness. And this week we're going to be looking at the ancient Mediterranean, at Rome and Greece particularly. So we have a couple of different ways that we know about drinking and drunkenness from ancient Rome and ancient Greece, and these are laws, customs, and literature. So as for laws, in general, the laws were fairly consistent, I'll say, but there were a few things kind of in the society that could double your fine, so to speak. So let's say you injured someone and you had to pay a fine, or you broke a law and you had to pay a fine. The fees would be doubled if the crime was committed in the evening, at nighttime, if the crime was committed in a temple, or if the crime was committed in a marketplace. And the only other way that you could get kind of your fines doubled is if your crime was committed while intoxicated. So clearly this was something that was a problem, and it was something that was definitely looked down upon. So if you kind of had issues with drunkenness, you could definitely count on some type of policeman coming in and calling you out on it, so to speak. And we actually have a lot of complaints that were lodged. We have the actual complaints of people who were acting kind of disorderly, disrupting things. And we also have something that is probably like one of my favorite pieces of history, wine history, that I've read, which is that there was like an ancient form of DUI, if you don't live in the States, driving under the influence, and it was driving a donkey under the influence, which I like to call DDUI. So it was when a donkey driver was inebriated, he could be kind of like pulled over and fined for that. So that's kind of an interesting little topic, isn't it? So we have those, and then next we have kind of the customs that tell us about how drinking and drunkenness was kind of dealt with and understood within society. So generally, we know simply from the symposium and the convivium and the commissatio, which happened after the convivium in Rome, whereas the symposium was in Greece. Watch your lectures if you don't remember. And from these we know that men were predominantly the ones that were getting drunk, because they were simply the only real ones in attendance in any great number at these kind of different banquets and festivals and such. So we definitely know that it was the men. We know that they were kind of sequestered to a particular room. There were special rooms for these events. And that it didn't just involve toasting and benders and drinking games and whatnot. It actually involved speaking and debates and things like that. So in general, the Greeks were a lot more appropriate with their wine than the Romans were, I want to say. So they actually kind of got drunk less, but there was a decent amount of drinking going on with both cultures. So I have a couple of kind of like literature quotes and stories to share with you that'll also give us a kind of a more rounded view of drinking in the ancient Mediterranean. So my first is Aristophanes' Knights. So there's two characters in here, and they're trying to discuss kind of how to get out of like a pickle, a bad situation. And one of them's name is Demosthenes, and he proposed drinking unmixed wine because he says that everyone knows that unmixed wine kind of nurtures the human imagination, so to speak. And that he wants to have like a fantastical kind of vision to get them out of this trouble. So he drinks the unmixed wine and he decides to steal to get out of his pickle. So this is clearly kind of a lowbrow thing to do, to drink wine to get out of your problems, but at the same time it shows kind of what was thought about wine and how people knew that it kind of nurtured fantasy, and this was what they turned to. Next we have Plutarch, he's from about 47 AD to 127, and here's a quote by him about what he observed about drunkenness. Song, laughter, and dancing are characteristics of men who drink wine in moderation. But babbling and talking about what is better left in silence is at once the work of actual intoxication and drunkenness. So, not a fan of drunkenness. Plutarch is definitely not a fan of drunkenness. Then we have the poet, or actually first we'll say Aeschylus, a 6th century BC playwright, who mentioned that bronze is the mirror of the outward form and wine is the mirror of the mind. So this kind of has to do with the idea that definitely the ancient Greeks embraced a lot, which was that wine was meant to kind of loosen the tongue and to help encourage sociability and sharing of ideas and debate and spark debates and whatnot. So this is kind of the idea that wine is something that can unleash kind of your innermost thoughts and your innermost desires. Then next we have the poet Panyasis, and he said, it was believed to erase decorum, this is wine, and to lead to illegal or violent acts. So that's not a good reputation to have, is it? So clearly people definitely did see, as we saw with the laws that were created, violent acts did come from people that were drinking, and definitely probably intensified the violence of the acts. And then the last thing that I wanted to share, which I thought was especially funny, is so there was kind of a competition called the Dionysia, obviously a derivative of Dionysus, and for 424/423 year, the first prize in this competition was won by a play called Pitine, which is translated to wine flask. And the play is actually about a woman who is married to her husband and everything is fine, and then her husband, essentially in the play, has an affair with wine. So he's so incredibly involved with wine that he has no time for her. He doesn't want to pay attention to her, and it's a whole big, you know, funny play on comedy. But I hope that you kind of enjoyed learning about the attitudes towards wine in the ancient Mediterranean. If you did, click the thumbs up button right below and let me know that you liked it, and subscribe for more lectures because we'll keep going with this same topic next week, and I will see you then. Cheers!